the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
For 7 weeks this March and April, Greater Cincinnatians got a peek at what it takes to make a Hollywood film. If you watch a shoot in Hamilton, Cheviot, Hyde Park, or downtown Cincinnati, you know that it takes dozens of costumed actors, extras, and seemingly hundreds of people whose names will only whiz past in the credits, and an infinite amount of patience to shoot even a short outdoor scene. Although Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara have left town, actor-director Don Cheadle and the crew of Cincinnati's next feature film, Miles Ahead, have already opened shop here in Cincinnati. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Making movies isn't just about star power and opening nights. It's a business, and right now Cincinnati is on a roll. Partly that's due to New York-like streetscapes, but more importantly, it's because those backdrops don't come with Manhattan prices, and most importantly, the state of Ohio has intentionally sweetened the pot to attract these efforts. But it still takes somebody to assemble the pieces, make the connections that allow film staffs to do their thing. That means someone who can become a friend and confidant with the directors and the stars on one hand, but also convince business owners and homeowners that their places are perfect, but will require everything to be changed. And all the time being willing to run down the street to pick up a bottle of water for a thirsty extra. Locally, the person who makes it all come together is Kristen Erwin Schlotman, the Executive Director of Greater Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Film Commission. Kristen, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Do you do all those things?
You describe that better than I ever have.
It's been so much fun this year watching you sort of work with Carol and running around and doing all those things. And working in TV, going up for that shoot that one day, I wasn't totally surprised, but the people I was with they just were amazed at how long it took. And I think that scene was going to last about 20 seconds.
You didn't watch the most riveting scene that day. But what I think people realize once they're on a movie set is how many people are there to make that one scene happen, and how much money is spent just to get 30 seconds of footage. And whether or not it'll be used, we'll find out when the movie comes out. But
so let's talk a little bit about what it takes to make a movie. Okay, there are the actors, and people see them. There are the extras, there are the minor actors, the stars, all of that sort of thing. The people who appear on the screen. Then there's all the people that anybody who went to one of your locations saw. The people handling the costuming, handling the stand-ins for the actors so that they don't have to walk through the scene 50 times before. But then there's a back office operation, which is amazing, which I really didn't know about until you. How does that all get set up?
Well, and each time a film assembles, they set up an LLC. So all of these freelancers come together with this one vision. And you will have about 127 different departments or different roles on a film set. And they become, there's the business end of the operation, which is the production office. They're booking travel, they're booking hotel nights, they are making sure so-and-so gets to set on time, schedules go out, scripts go out. That's the business and the mindset of the operation.
Just that office for Carol was set up in Crew Tower, right?
Crew Tower, 2 floors of the Crew Tower.
How many people?
For about 5 months. And I would say, at any given time, there were 50 or 60 people in that office.
50 or 60 people in the back office. They weren't even out on the street.
Right.
Anybody saw them.
Right.
So that's all, okay.
And then once you get out on the street, you break that down, and those departments are everything from wardrobe to hair and makeup to extras to casting to principal casting to the director's department to transportation and teamsters and drivers and camera, sound. I could go on and on. But there's a lot of...
We're seeing a little footage from a shoot. This is up in OTR, up in the Over the Rhine one day, and just getting all of the old cars, because this movie, Carol, happened to be set in the 1950s.
Right.
So where do you find all that stuff?
Well, and what's so unique about Carol, and one of the things that I think Cincinnatians don't realize, is that Carol shot in Greater Cincinnati in its entirety. So every single scene of that movie has been shot in Greater Cincinnati. That's the longest any motion picture of this size has ever been to town. So the fact that they filmed for 7 weeks, but they were on the ground here in Cincinnati for nearly 6 months, spending money and hiring people and sustaining jobs for that long was really amazing. And when it came time to things like wardrobe or vintage cars, we would just work directly with local media and put a call out for cars, and you would be astounded at how many people had a vintage car that would love to have it in a major motion picture. And most of those cars, I think there was the exception of a couple taxis and perhaps a bus, but most every vintage vehicle came from the region. And with those vehicles came drivers who agreed happily to be in the film as an extra. So,
which means they're not getting paid.
No, they get a rental fee for their car, and they
get a
paid
rental
to be the
fee for
extra.
their, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And so on Miles Ahead, which is our next film that's prepping, we're looking for 3 different decades of period cars, and that recently has been published on our Facebook page to hopefully just to get the business here locally. We'd rather hire a local person's car and you as the driver than have to bring anyone in, because that's what this is about.
So who's doing all that scouting of possible locations? Because how many different locations did Carol use locally?
I think Carol was up to nearly 70 locations.
Okay.
It was,
and that's not just in the city of Cincinnati. As we said, that first shot I used was from Hamilton.
We did go to Hamilton for a day, and I think we were in Lebanon a day also. But for the most part, yeah, it was all Greater Cincinnati.
Okay. So when you're putting this together, who's doing the location search?
Sure.
Who's putting out that information? Is your office coordinating all that?
Yeah, the Film Commission, when we first hear of a project, we scout that project extensively, first and foremost, so that the director or the producers can see what Cincinnati has to offer for this film as a backdrop, what we look like, what our architecture feels like. And then once they commit to Greater Cincinnati, we encourage them to hire locals to finish scouting the rest of that project and manage those locations on a film set. Those are local people then that take over and become the location scouts and managers for the film.
So just to go back, every one of these major motion pictures is sort of starts over from the beginning. They set up a little company,
right,
and they start over. So all those people you see working are really independents who are just coming together for that project.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what's Cincinnati get out of this? How do you measure whether it's a success or not?
Well, I can tell you very clearly we had a study done by Cleveland State University to look at the entire Ohio landscape. And since these incentives have been started in the state of Ohio, we saw in that study $1.20 come back on every dollar that the state invested. And that is a 20% return that is good business for the state of Ohio. It's not just coming back to us in these payroll taxes on local people that are hired and these hotel nights and these transportation.
The people who come in would also pay local taxes,
absolutely,
right?
But it's coming back to us. Every one of these crew members not only gets a per diem that is spent in our local restaurants and our hotels, but their paychecks on the weekends are being spent here. And when you bring a company in for 6 months, we're seeing a tremendous impact here in Cincinnati alone. And so recently, now that the movie business has picked up, we've partnered with the University of Cincinnati's economics departments to do an economic study on just what's happening here in Southeast Ohio. I mean, this is going to be in Southwest. This is going to be a significant return that we see, because they're not just pieces of motion pictures like we had in the 90s. These are entire productions happening here. So it's not just a one-off job. These are sustainable jobs now for Greater Cincinnati.
What about the Miles Davis film that Don Cheadle is here to do? And will that be entirely shot here, or is that partly here and partly someplace else? No,
that's entirely here, although, I mean, we might have to venture 30 to 40 minutes outside of Cincinnati for a location here and there if we can't find it in the more immediate downtown. But that entire film is also here in Greater Cincinnati, and it stars Don Cheadle and Ewan McGregor, and we'll start filming right after the 4th of July and run for 6 weeks.
So it's the same, and is its structure in terms of the number of people involved basically similar to what Carol
Very
was?
similar, very similar. And a lot of our local people who worked on Carol are now working on Miles Ahead, and people that were trained on Carol now have paid positions on this, and the interns that we had on Carol are now moving up to paid positions on this movie. So it's really exciting to see.
As you mentioned, you referenced back that in the 90s we all paid attention when Rain Man was shot, and maybe those were only partials, and Lost in Yonkers and whatever. But there seemed to be a long period of time we didn't hear about much of this.
Yeah.
Is it that state law that changed things, the subsidy by the state of Ohio?
So when Cincinnati had that run of success, we looked a lot like New York. It was easier to shoot here than in New York in the 90s with different union issues and things like that. And, you know, we were doing Rage in Harlem, Lost in Yonkers, 8 Men Out, all these New York pictures. That span of time where movies were not coming to Cincinnati, they also weren't shooting anywhere in the U.S. They were going to places like Toronto and Canada, where Canadians were incentivizing you to hire Canadians and giving you more exchange on the American dollar. And so therefore your production value was going up and you were putting more money on the screen and less into the making of it. And that was very enticing. If you were leaving Hollywood, you were going where you could be cost effective in savings. So we saw a lot of runaway production to Canada. Then we saw things happen in New Zealand with the Lord of the Rings trilogy in the Czech Republic. And the U.S. started to catch on, and different states said, how can we get this business back? We're going to have to start finding our own incentives. States like Louisiana started this, and theirs was a tax credit that if you came to the state of Louisiana, they would provide you with a 30% tax credit. And that was fueled through their natural resources program in the state of Louisiana, and therefore had no cap. So Louisiana started right away and is still very successful. Other states tried, like Michigan, and had a good run and then couldn't keep up with the demand. And so we learned a lot. We watched all these states and studied different programs. And the state of Ohio was a little late in adopting motion picture incentives, but I tell you what, they took their time to see what worked and what didn't work. We were the 42nd state to adopt motion picture incentives. We started small to build infrastructure. We didn't get overexcited and throw a lot of money at Hollywood. We started at a $10 million for the entire state the first year, and now we're up to $20 million. And we're seeing it come back, 20% return on that. So Kentucky was 43rd, and now we've maintained this program for about 5 years and are looking to expand it because we see it working for the state of Ohio.
So we only have about a minute left. Beyond Miles Ahead, what's the prospect here?
Well, I have several films that are still on the calendar for this year alone, and I can't tell you which ones they are, but I have a director coming in from London on Monday, and then another director from San Francisco coming the week after. So I feel like we're not big enough yet where we can do 2 motion pictures at once, but we certainly are capable of keeping this business on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Kristen, it's good information that you've given us here. It's fun to have spent the last year sort of seeing what you do, and let's come back, okay?
I'd love to.
Let's get
Thank
Don
you.
Cheadle on here. Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by a local Cincinnatian who is the focus of a new documentary.
To be honest, without elements, I'd probably be somewhere out in the streets right now doing something negative. I was moving too fast, kept thinking I was grown, then I dropped out of school, I was never really home. Living room floor where I'm praying on my knees, got a picture frame full of all my memories, from a child to a teen, from a teen to a man. I thank you all for whoever understand. Money and fame don't grow from the land. Now can I get a amen? I'm Tafari, I'm 22 years old, I'm from Cincinnati, and I've been a member of Elements for about 3 years now.
Welcome back. In 2005, in the long shadow of the riots a few years earlier, Elements, that's Elements with a Z, open to provide inner-city young people a safe, positive place to find an outlet through music and spoken word, support and direction. Over the past few months, I have met Tafari McDade, one of those young people working at Elements. Back in April, Tafari shared his story with this year's Leadership Cincinnati class. 2 weeks ago, he came back to teach a group of older white business types what it takes to rap. I can tell you it takes more than one lesson. I am joined now by Tafari McDade, who, among other things, is the focus of a new documentary produced by Elements creative director Abdullah Pau called Spirit of Tafari. Tafari, welcome to Newsmakers.
What's going on, man?
The documentary and your connection to Elements, how long have you, well, you say 3 years at Elements, but what drew you to Elements initially? Why did you end up going there?
Change.
Change?
Yeah.
Meaning?
Because the courses I was going through in my life, I was on the wrong path in my life during those times. When I was in high school and I was doing music, I was rapping, but I was rapping about the inappropriate things in life. And when I seen Elements, I was like, maybe if I go down there, maybe Elements can help me change what I'm doing for my life.
How'd you even know about Elements? Did somebody tell you, or did you?
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you went there, what did they say, and what did they get you to start doing?
It wasn't necessarily like that. It was like some people, I heard a few people talking about it, and then I just so happened to see it one day when I was on a school bus coming from school, and then I just got up in there and just to see what it's about, and from that point on, it's been going pretty good.
So Elements is up on Ray Street, just so people know, just on the corner of Central Parkway and Ray's, and there's a lot of equipment to produce either video or audio,
yeah.
CDs and DVDs. So have you learned some of those skills about producing the music that you sing, so that you get sort of that side of things too?
I could say on an instrumental wise level, like I make beats now. When I first had started coming down to Elements, I was making beats, but I wasn't doing it as accurately like I am now. But yeah, I say beat making wise, and when it comes to me in the studio, I sometimes put a little mix down on my song, but I would normally have the people who know about the sound of music mix my songs.
Okay, so you're still the out front person. Talking about beats, there's a little segment from the documentary I want to play right now, and let's come back to that. So let's watch this.
Listening to beats, that's one thing that can help me overcome some of the things I've been through, like listening to beats, then thinking about the things I've been through in life, and writing about it, because once I write about it, it's going to get said, then I can let it go.
Now, when you say beats, what do you mean by beats? What is that, the rhythm of the music? What do you mean by beats?
It's like an instrumental with no vocals on there.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. It could be a hip-hop instrumental. It can be a reggae instrumental. It can be a street instrumental, a street music instrumental, but it's all what type of sound you want to come from your ears and your mind and heart. What do you want to put forth with your lyrics from that sound?
So do you usually start with the beats, or do you usually start with the words?
I usually start with the beats.
Okay, so you start with the beat, so you've got something, you sort of hear where it's going, where it's moving, and then you go to the words. Now, I found what you said there very interesting to me about the importance of writing and what that does for you. Expand on that a little bit. I mean, have you always loved to write?
Yeah, I've always loved to write. I mean, I would say when I was younger, I used to draw a lot, so when I was like around about 13, 12, when I was in the 8th grade and 7th grade, I used to draw a lot of pictures. I mean, sometimes I look back and think like, man, maybe I should really get back into drawing, but that helps me so far as writing wise. But as a rapper, I would say when it comes to writing, when I write it down, I think and reflect on it, and when I look and reflect on it, I want to be a positive message. And sometimes I might have that little grudge in my soul, like, oh, I probably didn't say everything correct way I want to say, and some people might not take this the way they would like to hear it. And so sometimes I might go back and write something else new, and maybe till I get the comfort zone in my mind and heart, like, yeah, this is good, and I think people will like my message.
Have you ever, do you know who Stokely Carmichael was? A civil rights activist back in the 60s. I'm old enough to
I'm not
be
familiar.
a contemporary. Very famous person. Wrote a book called Soul on Ice. And while he was in prison, he wrote a line in the opening page of that, which has always stuck with me since I first read it in college, which is, I write to save myself. Because his experience was writing. Through writing, he really understood who he was and where he wanted to go. I always say, personally, I never know what I think until I write it down. Some people can talk it out, but I have to force myself to write. And when I heard that passage from your documentary, that's what hit me. That's what you're playing with. You're forcing yourself to think it through clearly. And that's kind of interesting.
Now I got some I got some raps that I might then have already written down that I already recorded, and I might listen to it now, and I might disagree on the song. Like, man, I don't like that. I feel like some people might judge me upon the songs I've made, spiritually and maybe religious wise. But right now, if I just do a song and it get recorded, I don't put it out on the internet. Soon as I record it, I might give it a couple times and let me think back and say, all right, should this song really be up on the internet right now? Should I really take this song down so people don't hear it? And that's why I might think about doing some of my songs that I got up already on the internet.
Now, do you think of yourself ever, you're talking about rap, or do you ever think of yourself as writing poetry? Because that's really it. I mean, poetry to music, I mean, that's what music is and song.
It is poetry. I mean, poetry has been out longer than rap have. I mean, but that's where it started from. That's where rap started from, poetry. And I know Elements is going to do a big poetry contest and venture this year. I think it's in October that all sort of culminates. But you know, I can really for anybody who's writing song lyrics, they're writing poetry. I mean, that's the same thing. Now, when you were back in school, and some teacher said, I want you to rewrite this because I think you can do a better job. How did you like that message? You talking about work-wise? Yeah, right. We had an assignment in school. Sometimes it'll get kind of tough for me. Sometimes it get kind of tough for me, and I'll be like, oh, no. Then I go sit down at my desk and reflect and think about it like, shoot, let me just go ahead and see how the way she wants me to do it, or how the way he wants me to do it as a teacher, write it again and see how the situation would turn out. So in these past 3 years being connected to Elements, and you go to Elements how often? How often every week? Down there Monday to Thursday, almost every day throughout the weekdays. So this is a real commitment. Yeah. And given how do you think you've changed in the last 3 years? I definitely say I don't be in the streets as I used to. I don't hang around the wrong crowds of people a lot as I used to. I still got my crowds of people that I hang around with that I know I really shouldn't be hanging around with on a daily basis. But hey, I'm still living, I'm still alive, and I got to thank Christ for that. Okay. So is religion important? I would say not more of a religion-wise, but spiritual-wise. Okay. It's important to me, spiritually. So what's next for you? What's next for me is trying to get my education still. I'm still pushing towards that, and I'm never going to give up on that, and my family knows that. So you have to complete that high school education. Yeah. What do you hope to do someday? What do you hope you're doing 10 years from now? 10 years from now, I hope I could be out of town somewhere promoting my music. Okay. Basically. And this documentary, it's been aired once at the Esquire Theater. It is going to be available. It is available on Vimeo. It's already on, a part of it's online. We've seen some of those. But will that be for sale at some point, hopefully? I would like to say yeah. Okay. So not yet, though. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. Not for sure about that.
And there's a whole interesting twist to this. We're going to show you one more segment, but there's a whole interesting twist to this about how this came about and the relationship to Holocaust survivors.
Okay.
Really encouraging. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And it's been good to get to know you the last couple of months. We'll keep this going. And thank you for making Newsmakers part of your Sunday morning. We leave you this morning with a really nice rap from Tafari McDade that is featured in the spirit of Tafari.
I love mama. Yo, small family, small house, no room. As my mama warms up, the good food got me thinking like, bruh, I'm 22. I still live with my mama, what I'm gonna do? And then I look up and I see a roof over my head, so there's the proof. I love mama, yeah, that's the truth. I look back at all the times that was great. You always made sure I had a meal on my plate, even if I ended up coming home late. Wait, and every birthday I had a cake. My mama sent my brother letters upstate. I remember every time when I had a curfew. Tafari, that's you, and all the whippings that you gave me when I acted up at school. I look back and realize that's what a real mama do. So yeah, that's what I got so far on this track.